Well, it's Wednesday again, and I read some comic books, so I'll talk about them. So here we have Batman and Robin number 10. And all along I kept saying this was the best ongoing Batman title because the others are so bad. And some of this was intriguing and good, but it kind of fizzles. And probably predominantly is the main artist was few and far between. And they had to have a backup guy. Now they split the duties here. Duty. And yeah, it doesn't work. The backup artist might get good one day, but boy, to follow a very consistent, stylized what am I looking for? Approach is a tough thing to do. And it's always jarring anyway, unless it's like two different, like the main story and a backup story and that sort of thing. It'd be all right. But yeah, well, was never too crazy about that sort of thing. But ultimately, this, man-bat cult and all that kind of falls flat. And shush, just because the word shush exists, I don't know. But anyway, this is the end of the Man-Bat story. Then you get all this stuff here. And, oh, boy, we've got to stop him. And they do. But it's a cool design for Man-Bat, but only when this guy draws it. And all of that sort of stuff. But now it's apparent that, like the Hulk, Man-Bat has some other personalities, and so now this is like a different Man-Bat from his usual Man-Bat persona. And at the end, he's back to being Kirk Langstrom, and he doesn't know what happened. And of course, Batman says, "Well, we're gonna get you some help, and till the next time you turn into Man-Bat." But it establishes sometimes he'll be the okay, kind of stupid Man-Bat, like the Hulk. And other times he'll be this more ruthless, villainous, and evil Man-Bat. And Kirk has to struggle in between it all. Yeah, like, the Hulk. So, and of course the father and son thing. It's probably the closest and best that it's been between them. So they've dealt with that. Even though they're more alike. And, of course, a romantic interest for Robin. Robin's got a girlfriend and all that sort of thing. And it's all well and good. And, of course, there was no big reveals of any sort. Of course, all his suspicions about his principal were true, so on and so forth. Story-wise, it's not horrible, but it was a bit of a letdown. It didn't really go anywhere. But then again, compared to others, it's fine. And maybe wouldn't have reacted to such a okay reaction had the art been on game and stayed that way. But I guess Simone DeMeo is very slow and can't meet deadlines for a full comic book. And that's happened with really good artists. In some cases, some of them, just their doodles are pretty good. So it's like, but they're, very obsessive about their art. And so it takes too long. So it's unfortunate, but that's probably one of the bigger factors in it. But anyway, after this, I think there's another story. They end on a prelude into the next story, but I think the artist writer team will be moving on, and someone else will come in. I forget who, but in which it probably goes downhill after something like that. But maybe not. I have to wait and see. But this has pretty much been the bright spot for Batman this year. The rest is in pretty bad shape, except for World's Finest, of course, but that's about it. Meanwhile, as is usually the case now with the mainstream of DC and Marvel, are the out of continuity stories, what ifs, or other universes, or Elseworlds, which, okay, is other universes, really. So here's another take on the Gotham by Gaslight universe, established by the original one, where Batman took on Jack the Ripper. There was a follow-up with sort of like an Edgar Allan Poe villain, I believe, with the dirigible that he was going to bomb the city with. Wasn't as good as and really the first one. I don't know, there was some shaky things about it, but it looked so cool, and a lot of the atmospherics for it, just the idea of shoehorning a connection between the Waynes and Jack the Ripper as the origin of the character and everything. Okay, well, whatever. But now there's this return to it for this story, the Kryptonian Age. And they had already done this sort of Justice League, and I don't think it's connected with Gotham by Gaslight. But it was kind of the same era, so it would have to be yet another universe that's in the same era, but just not the same universe. And I don't know why I'm blanking on it. I have it somewhere, Elseworlds story, and it was a Superman-led story and all that. But anyway, so here, the Kryptonian Age, so it has arrived for Gotham by Gaslight. Now, this first issue should have been called Catwoman by Gaslight, because she's far more prominent in this. She wasn't in the original story, but the animated adaptation they did, she certainly was, and didn't really care for that film. But anyway, so it's interesting, and we'll see where this is going. It's dealing with people's obsession with legends of lost civilizations and that sort of thing, and so it's an interesting take on that. And well, they've done similar things in other stories. But anyway, so here's Martha and Jonathan Kent, the wagon trail, and this is the familiar scene, albeit in a wagon and a horse, and everything. But look up in the sky, and and it arrives. And, gee, that must be the spaceship, but it's glowing green. Is the baby in there, and that's what this is. It doesn't really tell you. But then the tribe shows up. So I'm wondering, do they end up adopting the baby Kal-El, and you end up with Super Chief or something like that? It might be. But the rest of it is they jump ahead years back to Gotham. Catwoman is involved in doing Catwoman things, but it's okay because she's providing for a women's shelter and that sort of thing. And eventually Batman makes his appearance, and the League of Shadows are involved as well. So it's off to an interesting start, which is always good. And so I'll be checking this out. But it also, once again, solidifies that for when it comes to mainstream titles, your best bet are the out-of-continuity stories. For the most part, it appears they're just left alone, and the creator, for whatever premise they want to pursue, they pursue it. And so that tends to lead to a more solid narrative for the story overall. So, so far, so good for this one, and I'll be checking in on it as we go. Meanwhile, over at Green Lantern, which has been one of the better titles that DC produces, along with, for the most part, the Superman titles, and of course, World's Finest. But I kind of think, boy, if it was in a stronger state, you basically have two Green Lantern titles. You have this, the main Green Lantern title with Hal Jordan, and then John Stewart's Green Lantern War Journal, which are both strong titles. It's just a lot of the narratives here with United Planets and stuff. Might be better to have a Green Lantern Corps story detailing it as well. But then again, it might get a bit too stretched out. But you end up with the title character becoming a guest star in his own comic book, and that hasn't been the case in total for him, but it is of late. However, it pays off. The obvious thing that Carol Ferris is not over Hal Jordan, and I feel sorry for her fiance. But did he not see anything there? I mean, and it's like, you're involved with a woman who's still hung up on her ex-boyfriend. Yeah, it's time to move on, buddy. Yeah, it's not gonna happen. Yeah, so she gets the Starfire ring. She rides in to the rescue. So here you get a lot of what I said would be, Green Lantern Corps stuff, which it is. But maybe I think I'm probably making too much of it now that I think it through and say it out loud. I guess it works out okay. But we get to what's the problem with Kyle Rayner here and what happens, and suddenly he explodes at these guys coming to get him, and he basically is able to just strip them of their Green Lantern powers, it appears. Because and that goes, what's the problem with him is that he's having difficulty dealing with this power that he possesses. And it's like he woke up, and he's like, oh, what's going on? That kind of thing. So a mystery with Kyle Rayner. Meanwhile, Hal Jordan's got his hands full. They're all surrounded. They're really losing the battle. They've discovered the secret of Theros, and but he does escape, but just barely, and Carol Ferris saves him, and then, of course, they reunite. They go back home and have a romantic little get-together because, she admits she still loves him, only to get interrupted by some damn villains and whatnot. So there you go. Green Lantern, yes, again, remains of the main continuity of DC, one of the better titles to check out, should you so choose. Meanwhile, over in Green Lantern War Journal, the other good Green Lantern title, albeit a very sad one because of what's happening to John's mother, and even if she survives the attacks of the villains, she's a doomed woman because of the tragedy of her condition. So meanwhile, the alternate universe Green Lantern continues to struggle in support of John Stewart. And then you have these United Planets lanterns who can switch whichever color of the spectrum they want to use. And so that has whatever this is, and how they're able to achieve that hasn't exactly been fully explained yet. But that'll be the reveal by the end of how this all started with Theros and his guys. So basically you have the tough battle there. Meanwhile, John Stewart is battling with the Dark Star of the Finn, and ends up in was this supposed to be like a fake Amethyst take? But he's in this dream world because the real villain, or the nasty here, is like a demonic force and is trying to take possession of John Stewart to enter the real world, and that's the battle that he faces. So it's akin to a horror story in his take, or his comic book run here, especially with this sort of demonic apparition attacking his mother in her with her mind in the throes of dementia, and all that's left is this Green Lantern construct that John left to babysit her in the form of his dead sister. And I'm thinking that it's a construct, but at the same time it's becoming sentient unto itself, and I'm guessing that's going to continue. But such is the case because both John and Hal, the sources of their Green Lantern power is very different from the original which has been somewhat explained for Hal Jordan, but I imagine it'll go further than that as they go forward. But anyway, yeah, it's again, the Green Lantern titles are doing very well. The backup stories, they're all right, but sort of okay. And there's a silliness of with Guy Gardner, of course, which you expect with the fake Lobo that he got stuck with and all that. But in the end, he shows up in this as well to save the day. So that's interesting. So the gang will all get back together to deal with the corruption of the United Planets. So usually I end with World's Finest because for the most part, as far as superhero stories go in comic books these days, it's the best of the batch. Well, I'm thinking Green Lantern edged them out this time around, and it's the nature of the story like this when you're dealing with omnipotent godlike beings, such as the case with Batmite and Mxyzptlk. Yeah, I know it's Mxyzptlk, but I prefer Mxyzptlk, Anyway, and then, oh no, there's this terrible threat that approaches them, and then Jimmy Olsen ends up being. But I mean, it's just one of these things, anything can happen, and does, to where really, the Justice League shows up, but they're like, well, what are they going to do? And so mostly it's going to end because you outfox the godlike being into quitting or doing themselves in or what have you. It's like how Captain Kirk would outfox the androids and stuff, or the computers, and you basically tell it, I'm a liar, and that's true. But how can you tell the truth when you are a liar if everything you say is a lie, but it is true? But how can it be when everything you say is untrue? That kind of thing. And then his ears blow smoke and he fries and dies. Something like that is usually how it goes. Or, they bring back the super imps and stuff, and so maybe they'll fix it. But ultimately, that's about it. The art's great, and silliness abounds, but probably the weakest run of the World's Finest stories, and that it doesn't really matter. And ultimately, unless they do a thing here where it sets up the ramifications of absolute power, I don't know. This is all in its past, but whatever. But very difficult to write a story concerning godlike beings, and I don't mean like Thor or something like that. I mean a god, God power. You can do anything. So it's just, I'm bored with this. It was fun, but I'll just fix it where it never happened and go home. That's usually how something like that goes in some sort of fashion. Meanwhile, over at Marvel, one of the few titles in their mainstream continuity that's even worth a glance was, Moon Knight and The Incredible Hulk, which was going into a horror story. But it's now the 13th issue. It is dragged on into this Mother of Monsters story. And in this issue, like quite a few, delves right back into, Bruce Banner and the Hulk don't like each other. So there's a struggle there. Lots of creepy, nasty horror imagery as they are basically in hell looking to save the soul of poor Charlie and all that. But first they got to once again deal with their issues for the millionth time while supposedly supposed to save the girl. But then, Hulk's always kind of stupid, so he's got to remind him of what they're supposed to do and all that. Meanwhile, really disgusting scenes here, reminiscent of Hellraiser. Oops. Oh, boy. Probably shouldn't have shown that one. But anyway, it's getting tired. And I doubt that the payoff will be all that great since it's taken so long to get there. And that's unfortunate. But then what do you do after that? Well, I don't know, but will I still be interested enough to find out? I'm getting to be a bit dubious at this point. So, good luck, Hulk. But wait a minute. There's the Ultimate Universe. Maybe that'll save Marvel. Well, so far it hasn't. I mean, the sales are apparently pretty good, especially for Spider-Man, but man, what a letdown this Spider-Man title has been. It's so slow and boring. But this one, finally by issue 6, there's some actual action in it. The cover is not lying. There is a battle with Kingpin, with Green Goblin joining Spider-Man into this. This was supposedly Harry Osborn's brilliant plan. We know Kingpin's a bad guy. Let's find out who his real boss is and attack him. And they get their asses handed to them. So Peter reveals all to his family, even though his daughter already knows. And it's sort of like a flashback tale. So he shows up. Oh, wait. What happened here? Oh, I hit a door. So it reveals everything, and you would expect certainly Mary Jane to be very upset with him keeping something like that. Allowing their little daughter to know it, albeit she accidentally found out, but nevertheless, she said, yeah, I was going to tell you one day. It's really bad and pathetic. But then she's like, well, I'm not mad, Peter. And it's like, what? Yes, she would be. They can work it out and everything, but it's just, yeah, whatevs. And then they go out swinging together. Well, no, not that kind of swinging. She grabs on to Peter in his Spider-Man suit, and, they make a date of it, because she thinks he's hot in the suit and everything. But come on. This is very irresponsible for him to be doing all of this, not telling her, letting their little girl know about this. I mean, she bursts it out, plus the son's going to be like, well, how come I didn't get to know? That kind of thing. It's fine. No, it wouldn't be. So it's just not smart, So I don't know what the thinking was there. I just don't believe Mary Jane wouldn't have been upset about that. But anyway, you get some sort of action scenes where Kingpin whoops the crap out of Spider-Man and the Green Goblin, and they have to run away with their tails between their legs. Yeah, that's about it. Meanwhile, the other Ultimate book that I got a chance to read, strangely called X-Men. Well, the main characters are mutants and all that, but this whole thing would probably work better on its own and be something entirely, just a horror story, where they're tormented by this demonic character and they got to deal with it and all that. But other than that, and like I said, it's interesting and stuff, but this just is not an X-Men title at all. And then it's almost like a shoehorn with the mutant powers. And then the girls are worried about being discovered. And one of them is. And oh no, what's going to happen? Meanwhile, she's taunted by this entity. And there's another conflict there and all that. But yeah, I don't know. Don't know if I can keep up with this one much either. Had it been allowed to be its own thing, which is what it is in a way, but it's like as a backup feature to an X-Men comic, maybe that would work better. And you actually had Ultimate X-Men, but for the actual X-Men, I guess you got to go check out Black Panther. They'll show up there. Storm does. And of course, like the Ultimate Invasion introduced, quite a few of the X-Men characters were a part of the ruling parties that ran the world and stuff like that. So I don't know. Maybe this should have been Ultimate Mutants or Ultimate New Mutants, and do a different tack that way. And it's these kids who find out they have these powers and all that. But it's very odd, and continues to be so. And really don't know what to make of it at this point. And I just don't think it works. So beyond the mainstream, for the best in comics right now, appears to be Ghost Machine titles, led by Geiger here. And it continues to be good. Here they're introducing the robot character that I think will get his own title. And that's interesting. And of course, it's all connected and whatnot over, well, good Lord, maybe several centuries. I don't know. It's odd about it because they all, like the covers have that little old checker box thing that old comics used to have and stuff. And, but the Rook series doesn't. Yet it is, a Ghost Machine title is Jeff Johns' book, but I don't know if that's supposed to be in the distant future from these universe of characters here, where you see the robot guy was in Vietnam, and then you got Redcoat, of course, who is immortal, so he's going to be a part of all these eras, but he was originally in the Revolutionary War times. But anyway, we get a little introduction to the robot character. Apparently he lived with one of the vets, and we're getting his eye view of his past and what. And of course, he's yet another sad character. Redcoat makes an appearance. What does that mean? I'm sure it'll all make sense one day. And so on and so forth. But this is a robot character in the era after the unknown war that left the whole planet irradiated. And then we catch up with our main character, Geiger, their double-headed dog, which I almost thought they were going to kill off in this title. Spoiler, they don't. Would have been really upset if they had. And his idiot sidekick, who is still an idiot, but feels really bad about it and makes good at the end for Geiger here. So one of the driving emotional power of the story is how sad it is, especially for Geiger himself. But you have to expect it. They're in the post-apocalypse. Everybody's messed up and lost something. But the art, of course, is absolutely excellent. And this is a book that's going somewhere. And so that in and of itself seals the deal. So do highly recommend checking out the Geiger series. So the other Ghost Machine title is, of course, as mentioned earlier, Rook Exodus, which is intriguing and cool and everything, although the premise of a failed colonized world with the wardens, they're called, wearing these animal helmets and controlling animals. It's unique. It's a strange setup, for it. But, I'll go with it because the art, again, is so damn good. And now we have sexy wolf woman here introduced, which, of course, is always great. So you got Birdman and Wolf Woman together at last. And, yeah, of course, there's a romantic interest there. So she's introduced in the second issue, and she controls wolves, which would seem like a better set of pets to have than birds, but it's not named Dire Wolf is her name. It's not named that. It's named Rook. Rook Exodus. So, wow, look at that, huh? Yeah. And don't worry, when she takes the helmet off, and she's very pretty. So, but the wolves, might give you trouble if you get a little too interested. So, meanwhile, Rook has to battle a sea monster. Yeah, just barely survives that. But don't worry, him and Swine, they got a rocket ship all set to go, and well, I'll let you read the book. Once again, very sad story, but it's a good run. And right, so yeah, the Ghost Machine titles are really good so far, and pretty much if you can't only got so much to spare these days of buying comics, probably just forget everything else and buy Ghost Machine, because at least you're getting a good romp through these fantastic tales. So there you go. That's what I read for this episode of Wednesday Comics. I'll read some more for next week, and I'll talk to you then.